The UNHAS plane had already landed, had refueled, and the plane was, the crew, after they had casualty evacuated their colleague, secured the plane so that it would be possible to use this morning, or today, the next day. And this morning the crew came in, went in to verify the condition of the plane, found that it was that it had not been damaged, and therefore we were able to use that plane to move Director General Tedros and his delegation.
But the air traffic control tower is still completely non-operational, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, on UNHAS pilots, and I can't say for other pilots, but certainly UNHAS pilots during daylight hours are able to take off without air traffic control.
Thank you. And my last question is, and I know you're dealing with a lot of very important humanitarian issues in Yemen, so I'm sorry to ask you these detailed questions about one incident, but I just wanted to get clarification because you were there. So thank you. Just my last follow-up is, clearly this was a close call that was unexpected. There were no warnings. My question is, when someone as high level as Dr. Tedros is in Yemen, do you normally, or would your office or someone normally inform Israel that he was there because Israel is part of this, a party to this conflict, or is that not normal protocol?
It is not. We have a protocol for all humanitarian workers to inform various parties to the conflict. I won't go into the details of precisely which parties to the conflict we inform. But I think the bigger issue is parties to the conflict have an obligation to ensure that they are not striking a civilian target, or not striking civilians. The obligation is on them, not on us. We don't need to prove we're civilians. They need to prove that they are hitting a military target. Sana'a Airport has not been a military target since 2016. I was in Yemen at the beginning of the conflict, and I remember the day when all of the military capacities were destroyed at Sana'a Airport, and that was 9 years ago. Right? And Sana'a Airport has been subsequently repeatedly bombed over for many years. So it's a civilian location. It is used by the United Nations. It's used by the International Committee for the Red Cross. It is used for civilian flights. That is its purpose. And so all parties to the conflict have an obligation to respect the civilian nature of that facility and to observe international humanitarian law. The responsibility is on them. Thank you.
Javier?
Yes, my name is Javier Otazo from the EFE Spanish News Service. A follow-up on the 100 people still detained. We understand there are no formal charges, right? But what are they accused of? And are all of them accused of the same thing, or there are different cases? Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. As you correctly noted, of those persons who were detained in June, we have not been informed of any formal charges, and there has not been. We're not aware of any statements on the specific individuals. The detainees from 2021 and 2023, the authorities here broadcast various accusations against them, and so-called confessions, where they were accused of espionage, a charge which the United Nations does not recognize.
You have another one. Then I'll go to Ephraim, then Edie, and then we will wrap up to allow Julien to go back to his activities.
Can you please provide any more details? I mean, espionage.
You know, I mean, Xavier, the thing is, we don't recognize it, so we don't really go into the. We're not going to be repeating charges that we do not adhere to. If you wish to dig into that, those allegations are on the internet, and I'm sure you would be able to find them relatively easily. But as I said at the beginning, all of our staff in the United Nations, we're here for Yemenis. You know, we've been here for decades, and we've been here since the 60s. Our only purpose is humanitarian assistance and, where possible, the development of the country. And our colleagues have risked their lives. We've had colleagues killed here in Yemen. We've had colleagues kidnapped. You know, the only reason we're here is to serve Yemeni people in situations of dire humanitarian need.
Thank you.
Ephraim, and then Edie.
Thank you so much. My name is Ephraim Kosaifi with Arab News Daily. About the UN staff in Yemen, given what's happening elsewhere and the systematic attacks we've been seeing for the past 14 months on healthcare workers, whether in Palestine or during the war in Lebanon, I know every one of your staff is there to serve and all of that, but what is the morale really? How much of a trepidation are they looking to the events around them and the way the healthcare and the humanitarian workers are being treated in these wars? Thank you.
And well, thank you, Adrian. That's a very humane question. The you know, the conditions, both as a result of, I mean, obviously, firstly, there's a result of the detention, not just UN's personnel, but also NGO personnel. We're completely perturbed. I have many colleagues who, you know, for weeks were very anxious about even coming to the office or going out on field missions. And similarly for NGO staff, and you know, even for myself, you know, I sort of you know, I was thinking about, goodness, what if they, you know, sort of start trawling? Somebody picks up my phone and starts trawling through all my WhatsApp messages with my wife or something. You know, when you're in that kind of environment, you're operating in that environment. It's very heavy for everyone. And then in addition, so you've got those challenges, and we've seen some improvements in the operating conditions in the last, say, 2-3 months. There's been some changes in the personnel in the authorities in Sana'a, which has meant that some of the problems that we saw have reduced. So we have been having international staff have no longer been asked to leave Yemen, which was the case up until about 3-4 months ago, where every week we would have an international staff member asked to leave. The discussions that we have with the authorities now are much more focused and directed towards finding solutions for Yemenis in need. The agreements, which were so difficult to achieve in the past, have, for both the UN and for NGOs, we've been able to rapidly conclude those. So we've seen some improvements in the operating conditions, and that has reduced to a certain extent, the concerns amongst Yemeni staff. But obviously, when they still see that 16 of their colleagues are detained, and NGO staff and national NGO staff are detained, there's obviously a great deal of anxiety. Then if you add in addition to that, airstrikes and the fear of more airstrikes, the concerns of the fear of, you know, what's going to happen next? Are we going to see attacks against bridges, roads, electricity systems, and other civilian infrastructure? What does that mean for them as you know, we have 3,000 staff across the country, and we're moving around constantly. And you know, what's going to happen to them? And obviously, you know, we follow the news, we see what happens in other countries. You know, my staff, and not just my staff, NGO staff, and you know, health workers in government clinics. They look at that, and there's a lot of fear. So you know, it's very difficult to keep people focused and working for vulnerable Yemenis. But you know, fortunately, that is the case. Everybody's getting on with what's required, but it is a very challenging environment.
I will take a final question from Edie.
Thank you very much, Julian. A couple of follow-ups. Who was the highest-ranking Ansar Allah official that you met with? And I wonder if you could elaborate. You said that they gave you commitments that you hope are going to lead to the release of these people who have been detained. Could you elaborate at all on the kinds of commitments that you got? And on the attacks yesterday, the Israeli government said that they attacked the airport because the Houthis used the airport, and so did the Iranians to ship in things. What's your message to Israel in response to the airport, which you've stressed to us is a civilian airport?
Thank you very much, Edith. So the in terms, so we Director General Tedros and myself met and I'll be using titles which they use to refer to themselves. The Prime Minister of the Government of Change for Reconstruction. Obviously, the Prime Minister of the internationally recognised government is another person, and that person, you know, is in Aden, in the temporary capital. But so we, Director General met the Prime Minister of the de facto authority, met the Foreign Minister, Mr. Jamal Amar, and met a member of the Supreme Political Council, Mohammed Ali al-Houthi. Those were the three meetings. Director General also met with families of the detained, which was obviously, as you can imagine, a very emotional meeting, and was certainly for me as a UN staff member was probably the most important of the meetings. The commitments that we were given related to the possibility of release and a pathway to that, and the conditions on which they are detained. I won't be able to go into further details on that. In terms of the airport, there is only one flight other than the International Committee for the Red Cross, the United Nations, that uses Sana'a Airport, and that's a Yemeni airline which flies an Airbus 320 to Amman, Jordan. That is the only location that they fly to, and that is a result of an international negotiation. Now, I've flown through Jordan many times. I've flown through Amman Airport many times, and the level of scrutiny and security in Amman Airport is, I would suggest, one of the best in the world. Certainly, every time I try and take anything more interesting than my clothes, you know, there's a deep level of scrutiny there. So, it's a civilian airport. There is one civilian flight to one city, which presumably can be quite easily verified by member states that would wish to require to understand more about that flight. And as I noted, it is that flight operates as a result of an international agreement. I hope that's of help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will end on this note. Julien, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, for taking all of these questions. Thank you so much for your availability. All right, thank you. I will take 2 minutes to go back to the office to grab a few more pieces of paper for you, and I will be right back.
It's almost worth doing, thinking about it, I mean, you've got good stuff, but the idea that these airstrikes to erase justice, meters is like 900 to 1,000 feet.
Okay, thank you so much for your patience. I'm back, and I will have a few notes for you, then I will take your questions. Let me start with Syria. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that cross-border aid deliveries continue from Turkey into northwest Syria. Today, 9 UN trucks with aid crossed into Idlib using the Bab al-Hawa border crossing. The convoy was carrying 200 metric tons of food assistance from the World Food Programme, enough for some 80,000 people, as well as school supplies from UNICEF. Meanwhile, the humanitarian community in Syria continues to provide vital support to people in eastern Aleppo. UNICEF reports that after months of test and repair work, water is flowing again from the Ain al-Baida station, which had been out of service since 2017. Some 300,000 people in Al-Bab in northeastern Aleppo, including displaced families and host communities, depend on this water station. Water is reaching part of Al-Bab's population, but urgent support is needed to restore the station to full capacity. OCHA says that as of today, some 664,000 people remain newly displaced across the country, mostly in Idlib and Aleppo, and that is since November 27th. This marks a decrease of about 64,000 people compared to a week ago. More than 3/4 of those who remain displaced are women and children. The UN and our partners continue to track population movements on a daily basis through a working group co-chaired by OCHA. Our colleagues say that returnee movements remain fluid, with nearly 486,000 people having returned to their areas of origin, mostly to Hama and Aleppo governorates over the past months. Now, turning to Gaza, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is alarmed by ongoing attacks across the Gaza Strip that have left scores of Palestinians dead. Our colleagues are telling us that an airstrike near Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza Governorate last night reportedly killed dozens of people, including health workers. Today, we're also told by our colleagues that staff, patients, and their companions were forced out of the facility. Significant damage to the hospital has also been reported. Our UN teams continue to face systematic denials of humanitarian access to North Gaza. Just today, another attempt by the UN to reach parts of North Gaza Governorate were denied by the Israeli authorities. Since early October, most UN-coordinated attempts to access these areas have been denied. The few exceptions have faced significant impediments, which often prevent teams from accomplishing the work they set out to do. Our humanitarian colleagues also noted that last night, another attack was reported in the Sheikh Radwan area of Gaza City. OCHA visited the area and noted that overstretched health facilities were receiving mass casualties from the strike. OCHA's team in Gaza City also assessed the needs of people displaced from North Gaza Governorate, which has been under siege, as we've mentioned here, for several weeks. The team in Gaza City said that few water wells are operating in areas where displaced people have gathered, and the sewage network has been damaged. There is no solid waste management. Hospitals are overcrowded, and people are living in unsanitary conditions that are raising the risk of disease outbreaks. Our colleagues also tell us that people at displacement sites also face risks due to potential flooding. Now, in the West Bank, our colleagues tell us that as of yesterday, Israeli forces had killed 20 Palestinians over a 10-day period, including at least 12 deaths due to airstrikes. Our colleagues say that Israel's military operation in Tulkarm's refugee camp caused extensive damage to infrastructure. OCHA warns that lethal warlike tactics are being applied repeatedly during these operations in the West Bank, raising concerns over use of force that exceeds law enforcement standards. As this year draws to a close, our humanitarian colleagues report that 2024 marked the largest number of Palestinians Palestinians displaced across the West Bank since OCHA's records began nearly 2 decades ago. They tell us that as of Tuesday, a total of 4,706 Palestinians have been displaced across the West Bank this year, including 1,949 children. The majority were displaced in operations carried out by Israeli forces, primarily in refugee camps and other urban areas of the northern West Bank. Our colleagues also note that demolition of Palestinian property was among the other factors driving record displacement this year, which also including settler violence and access restriction. Over the past year, Israeli authorities have demolished or forced the demolition of over 1,200 structures, citing lack of permits. And now turning to Sudan. In the capital, Khartoum, the World Food Programme is scheduled to start distributing food on Sunday, 29 December, and this food is destined to approximately 78,000 people. The food assistance is currently being offloaded after a WFP-led convoy of 28 trucks arrived in Khartoum on the 25th of December. This, our colleagues say, is the largest convoy to reach the capital since the start of the conflict in April 2023. The convoy includes WFP food assistance, UNICEF supplies, and aid for other partners. This convoy is also the first time since the start of the conflict that WFP food assistance has been delivered to Mayo and Alingaz in southern Khartoum. Both areas are at risk of famine, according to the IPC classification. WFP has been working to gain access to all parts of Khartoum, taking advantage of brief lulls and fighting to deliver food assistance while also supporting the community efforts to deliver daily hot meals. In July, a WFP convoy delivered food and nutrition assistance to people in Bari, Karari, Umbada, and Omdurman localities of Greater Khartoum. WFP is also working to expand the delivery of hot meals through the community-run projects in Jebel Aulia. WFP is already supporting community kitchens in Mayo and is working to expand hot meals to Alingaz as well. And finally, we have an international day today, and it is the day of the International Day of Epidemic Preparedness. In his message, the Secretary General says that COVID-19 was a wake-up call to the world. Millions of lives were lost, economies shattered, health system pushed to the brink, and daily life upended for all of humanity. On this day, he calls on countries to heed the lessons of past health emergencies to help prepare for the next. And that is it for me. I will take your questions. Edie, go ahead.
Thank you, Stephanie. First, on Yemen, Dr. Tedros tweeted that he's in Amman, Jordan. Is he staying there? Is he planning to fly back today to Geneva, where WHO is headquartered?
My understanding is that he is on his way to Geneva. I don't have his exact schedule for the next flight. He took, as Julien told us, the UN humanitarian air assistance flight that took him to Amman, and I believe that they will make their way back to their headquarters soon.
Thank you. And secondly, can you tell us on Gaza, is Kamal Adwan Hospital still operating after this attack?
We checked with our colleagues from the World Health Organization just now, just before the briefing once again. What they're telling us is that right now they don't really have access to the hospital. As I said in the note, you see, we noted once again how difficult it is for us to have access to these areas. So they're continuing to check and to see what exactly is the state of this hospital. But just as a reminder, we continue to call on all parties to comply with their obligation to respect and protect in all circumstances medical personnel and medical units, including hospitals and health facilities. Kamal Adwan is one of the last, if not the last, hospitals that was operating in this part of Gaza. Sick and injured children are going into this hospital. We're going into this hospital to get treatment. Sick and injured men, women were also going there with medical personnel, risking their lives in some cases to continue to provide services to people who really need it. And this is why we continue to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. We continue to call for the protection of all medical facilities in Gaza. Yes.
I mean, you've been calling for that for a long time from this podium. The Secretary General has been. And to be frank, it hasn't worked. I mean, Kamal Adwan Hospital was just seized by Israeli authorities in the last few hours. And by all accounts, all of the doctors and all of the patients inside have been forced out. Their whereabouts are unknown, and their safety is unknown at this point. So with that said, what is the message from the Secretary General on the protection of the patients and hospital staff and anyone else that is unaccounted for right now from Kamal Adwan Hospital?
These actions put the lives of all of these people in even more danger than what they faced before. And for us, you know, what we can do, we have colleagues on the ground who continue to try to get access. You know, we've been reporting in the past few weeks, several weeks now, how we've been making attempts to deliver assistance to this part of Gaza, to the hospital. In some cases, I think, was it on Monday that I think I was able to report that we were able to, that WHO was able to bring some assistance to the hospital. Right now, I think what we can do is, of course, with our colleagues on the ground who continue to do all they can to provide, to support the assistance, to support the people of Gaza, and we continue to call for these facilities to be protected.
Thank you, Stephanie. If Israel, I'm not there, you're not there, we're going off secondhand information, if Israel is holding any doctors, any patients, anyone associated with that hospital, including journalists right now, if Israel is holding them, detaining them against their will, what is the message from the Secretary General to Israel about that?
I can just reiterate the message that we've been delivering from here several times, that we call on all parties to comply with their obligation to respect, to protect in all circumstances medical personnel, including hospitals, medical facilities, in accordance with international humanitarian law. Yes.
Thank you. I have a question about Syria, especially Syrian minorities. I don't know if you saw any footages, clips recently. The minorities have been under attack, especially Christians, Alawite Shias, other minorities. First of all, do you have any comment on that? And second, what UN is doing to protect these people recently? And also, what can you say to make these people feel safer? Because what we see, what we hear, they don't feel safe there.
Yeah. As you know, on this, just now, earlier today, there were consultations at the Security Council, and we had our colleague Geir Pedersen who briefed and closed consultations. I have a few points from what the message that he delivered to the Security Council. So he reiterated to members of the Security Council this morning that the key principles of Security Council Resolution 2254 have wide consensus. The transition there should be Syrian-led and owned, ensuring credible, inclusive, and non-sectarian governance, including also constitutional reform, the holding of free and fair election, and the meaningful participation of women. He stressed that the challenges ahead are immense and they cannot be underestimated. I think that refers also to some situations that you're describing now. He also noted that the risk of escalation in several areas of Syria is concerning. Syria's sovereignty, its territorial unity and integrity must be restored, and all acts of aggression must cease immediately. I don't know if we have questions online. Deji?
I have a question.
Oh, and who is it? Go ahead.
Oh, this is Stefano. I have a question.
Oh, hi,
Can I-
Stefano.
Hello, Stephanie. An Italian journalist has been arrested in Tehran. Her name is Cecilia Sala, and she's been arrested on the December 19. And the Italian government is just releasing the news now. And my question is, first, what the Secretary General think about this arrest? She had a visa as a journalist. She was doing her job. And now she has been in prison in Tehran. And also, did the Italian government contact already the UN to try to have maybe also help by the UN in this situation?
I don't have the specific information about that case, but I can find out if there's been contacts. I can just reiterate our standard position regarding journalists, that they should be able to do their work free, and they must be protected. But I'll check to see if there are any additional details on your question, Stefano. I think Mike also has a question, then I'll come to you, Deji.
Hi, Stephanie. I hope you're doing well today. I stepped away for just a brief moment. Was there any mention about the ballistic missile fired overnight by the Houthis toward Israeli airspace?
We're very concerned that the Houthis continue to launch attacks targeting Israel, including missile fired earlier today that was intercepted. The Houthis, they've also claimed that they had targeted a vessel in the Arabian Sea. So I can tell you that we reiterate that the UN Security Council Resolution 2722 must be fully respected in its entirety. In particular, we call on the Houthis to cease their attacks against international shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and we remain deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation in the region and continue to urge all to exercise the utmost restraint.
In that vein, I know the guest earlier didn't have probably access to all the conversations that were held with Houthi authorities there in Yemen over the last few days. While the UN is trying to extract its own employees there, were there any conversations with the Houthis specifically about their targeting Israel and the potential, as we saw, unfortunately, the potential consequences of that? Was that part of any of the dialogue?
I don't want to extrapolate more on what he said, but as he described, these conversations were really focusing on humanitarian issues, on issues related to the release of the staff detained. We would have to check on other details, but as we've said very often, we have the special envoy that continues his work in that regard, and his engagement continues.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Deji?
Yes, just want to ask, do we have a briefing next Monday?
I think so, but we will confirm that later this afternoon. You see, that's an easy question, but we will confirm. We will confirm.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone. Have a good weekend.
There's a Security Council.
I know.